You're listening to Masters Decoded podcast series. I'm your host and the chief decoder, Anis Merchant. Through this podcast, I bring in guests who are successful in a different walk of life to decode and map out their careers and journeys with the hope that we gain all our learnings. The world around us is changing exponentially, and how the impact of artificial intelligence, technology, and other socioeconomic factors have either influenced or enhanced my guests' careers. My next guest on today's episode is Shiv Misra. Shiv is a global analytics and insights executive with 12 plus years of leadership experience in creating as well as implementing analytical solutions with quantifiable business impact across multiple domains including CPG, hospitality, financial services, gaming, technology, retail sales, and e-commerce. He currently leads the marketing analytics function at Hilton Worldwide. Prior to this, Shiv started and led the data science and analytics function for the US business of Heineken. Shiv holds an MBA in marketing and strategy and a bachelor's degree in mathematics and was awarded 3 gold medals as well as the Governor's Medal for being University valedictorian. Hi Shiv, welcome to Masters Decoded podcast series. Really appreciate you taking time out right now.
Absolutely, my pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for having me.
Shiv, for the benefit of the audience, if you can share what your current role is at Hilton.
Absolutely. So I currently lead the global marketing analytics function at Hilton. So majority of my team is here in the US, but I also have some team in Singapore and London. And what we essentially do is we kind of support marketing make their decisions using data and analytics. So, it can be as preliminary as creating a dashboard or setting the right database up to advanced analytics like, natural language processing or machine learning for content audit or understanding how the marketing team spends their dollars on different channels, like through marketing mix models or multi-touch attribution models and test and learn. So that's what I do here at Hilton.
It looks like you're a perfect person for the role. When I was looking at your profile on LinkedIn, it came across, or you can correct me, as per your profile, you are a gold medalist in your undergrad. If you can tell me more about it, that would be good to know and how that came about.
Absolutely. No, thank you for the question, Anis. So yes, I did get 3 gold medals in my undergrad, and I also got the medal from our state governor for being the best student in university. But I think those medals were like a byproduct more than anything, because so I'll tell you this, I kind of like to plan my life way in advance. And what that does for me is that actually allows for me to kind of have some kind of confidence in the direction that I'm taking. So I did plan my career back in high school that I would want to do an MBA, and back then my father was not very happy with this whole decision. He was like, "How can you plan for that until you do your undergrad?" And he wanted me to do engineering. So he was not a big supporter of me doing a bachelor's of science. Uh, and I think it was a function of the culture, it was a function of the peer pressure and all of that. So I planned my career. I wanted to do an MBA, and I wanted to do an undergrad in mathematics to kind of support my MBA. So it was my choice to kind of do an undergrad in mathematics. So since it was my choice, I wanted to kind of for some reason prove to myself make sure my dad is proud of me of my performance in my undergraduate studies. So I think I just kind of tried staying at the top, and ultimately it came out that I was like the number one in the university, and also number one across all domains in field. So that's how I got like 3 gold medals. So one was for being the highest math scorer, and one was for the highest in mathematics, and one was for highest in science. So yeah, that's how I got the gold medals. But I would still say a byproduct.
And why was your parent, and specifically your father, little against you going for masters in business administration or do your MBA? If you don't mind me asking that
Absolutely.
question.
No, absolutely. I'm very happy to share because I think where I come from and like this is like Lucknow, a small town in northern part of India. I think, and again, like also a function of what people in my family prior to me had done, especially the ones who scored well in their school. So I was also in my school, like the first rank holder in the high school across all 4 years. So there was like this trajectory, like if you score well in your high school, you must become an engineer, and you must or become a scientist. That was a second alternative career path. Like, do your undergrad in science, masters in science, and a PhD. So business was not seen with a very positive light. I don't know what exactly happened in my family, but I think if you look at people around, a lot of people who did their graduate degree in business, they kind of ended up in sales. And for some reason, sales have this stigma in northern part of India that after being so good in studies, why would you end up in sales? I wanted to kind of
Hmm.
change that because I enjoyed sales. I enjoyed talking to people. So my dad wanted for me to kind of do a science master's and do a PhD and pursue a career like him. So he was a scientist, and I really respect him so much because he did some work which other scientists have not done in the world before. So he wanted me to kind of have my own patents and create my own stuff. But I really wanted to kind of go into the corporate.
You did your undergrad in mathematics.
Mhm.
And how did US come about from India? I believe that started with your career at WNS when you moved to Coca-Cola. How did that innovations, a person from Lucknow, a northern part of India, Lucknow is not one of the tier one cities. How did those inhibitions to move to US really come about for you?
That's a fair question and a good one at that. So I'll tell you this, US was never, so I always wanted to kind of, be at the company's global headquarters and be very close to where the decisions were being made. And when I joined WNS, my client was Coca-Cola, which was in Atlanta, USA. And I really wanted to kind of, see what exactly happens there. Who are the people who make these decisions? Who are the people who kind of, decide on how to use the data and what to kind of, predict or plan on for the future. So all that was great, but US was never my first country of choice. If you talk about traveling and staying and working overseas. The reason for that was I thought US was very far from India. So
Yeah.
for me, if you would have given an option of choosing between, let's say, United Kingdom or Australia or Singapore, I would have totally chosen those countries over USA. So now that being said, I've been here for 9 years now. And how did this come about was Coca-Cola, liked my work, and I was invited to kind of work on corporate strategy and BI, although with another vendor. So I came with Brandscapes, and I credit my coming to the US to Brandscapes a lot. But what actually happened, when I came to the US, was a very different experience compared to what I was hoping for. There was no snowstorm. There was the temperature was perfectly fine. There was Indian food available, so it was a very different experience. And I would say I've loved this country for the last 9 years.
From CPG to gaming to liquor to fintech, and currently in hospitality, what similarities have you seen across all these industries?
Sure. So I think at the end of the day, the goal of each organization is kind of similar, which is to sustain their current position in the market and to grow on top of that. So in a sense, a lot of these companies now they might be in different maturity cycle for how they make their decisions. They might be like Hilton and Heineken, more than 100-year-old companies, versus PayPal, a fairly young organization. uh, there are differences obviously in their approach, in the way they plan. I used to be at Coca-Cola and we used to plan for 10 years in advance. And then I used to support Dell computers and we were planning each quarter in advance. So uh, so I think there have been differences, but the similarity has been in in the way people accept better way to make decisions, and meaning everybody's motivated to kind of grow their organization, and everybody's trying to kind of find reasons and ways to grow their organization. And that's how they kind of see everything that is making their decision more objective, more robust, as like a good means. And I think that was the common thread. The common thread was like the acceptability of like getting data in to make those decisions for an organization. I think that is what connected the thread across these organizations.
I'd like to double click a little bit further, and this is for people
Sure.
who are thinking about switching industries and careers.
Hmm.
Typically, you spoke about acceptability of decisions or acceptability or an attitude of taking data to make decisions. But
Hmm.
you also touched upon a company which would probably plan for 10 years and a company which would plan in quarters. And I'm sure the other companies would be there, as well as you've had a pleasure of working with companies which are a century old. Culture and mindset of people and you as an individual coming into that culture and into that mindset have to adjust and readjust your own thinking. How do you, how have you achieved that, or how have you thought about planning for that? So what's your game plan? What does your first 90-day look like when you have joined? There's a famous book, First 90 Days, but
Hmm.
how has been your first
Right.
90 days when you have joined these industries or switched companies?
Right. No, that's a terrific question. And I'll tell you why. Because you're so right. Like, yes, there's like, some kind of commonality between organizations, but there are also stark differences. And like, to be very honest, and I think for the benefit of people who actually are considering this, in plain and honest terms, changing of industry is hard. It's very hard. So the reason for that is like, I'll give you an example. When I used to support Coca-Cola, it was traditional marketing. It was basically understanding what is happening at the consumer side, how are we approaching their needs, how is the marketing messaging, going through the right channels to the right consumers, and like, we are making the final purchase or sale happen. When I came to Dell computers, Dell was extremely advanced. Like, when I was supporting them, they were like, very advanced in terms of analytics, in terms of data science, but they were probably not at the same level as Coca-Cola when it came to brand measurement, when it came to like, brand marketing. So it was like, changing of worlds. And I remember like, a couple of weeks in the organization and I was supposed to present a model at Dell. And I was like, not too confident of like, what exactly that was because I did not buy in it in the first place. So you have to first of all, like, go and learn about the organization, then like have like like absorb what they're saying, but also kind of feel that sense of ownership of what you've inherited. And until you feel that sense of ownership, you still are an outsider, right? So it's kind of I would say like a tipping point that you have to cross before you could call yourself like totally engaged and immersed within the organization. So it is absolutely hard to kind of come over, but at the same time, it's also very exciting and challenging. And I think that is what motivates someone like me. Now, how I like, plan my first 90 days is so I kind of start with my long term plan. Now, my long term is not really 10 years. My long term is like, one, at least like, one fiscal cycle. So
Hmm.
my idea is like, whenever you start at an organization, please plan to kind of, win them over through creating something that is sustainable. So I'm very proud to say that, like, if I look back, uh, almost all of my previous managers will hire me back. The reason is because the programs that I started back there are still in place. Like, they are still happening. They are still bringing value to the organization. And I think that when you kind of, start planning for that, the first 90 days become like, like a crash course of like, a lot of things. One, how is the business model functioning? You have to understand that before you recommend anything back to the business.
Hmm.
Second, what is the culture of the organization? Some organizations are like, open-handed, like, they'll they'll bring you in conversations, they'll share things with you. Some companies take time to open up. It's also a function of like, how they've evolved as an organization. So focus on trying to understand what is the culture of the organization like. Number three is try and form relationships. Try and like form relationships within your team. Obviously, if you're inheriting a team, or if you're hiring your team, like make sure that you being the leader that they've always wanted. and you be the leader that you always wanted. So, form a relationship with your team, with your peers, with your manager, and also people from outside of your team. And my approach typically is, Anis, I try and find somebody in the business who's like the Yoda, you know what I mean. So somebody who's been there, done that, and I'm not talking about being in my role, being in the organization. Somebody who
Hmm.
knows the nuances. One example is, I won't take the name of the organization. There was this gentleman who had spent 30 years in the company, and he was in a very small department focused on a very specific thing. He used to come to the office, leave the office, and probably had one more person beside his desk, and their desk was located in like one corner. Now, I was kind of grabbing lunch with him the other day, like in the cafeteria. I saw him sitting, so I approached him, and I found a bond of respect with him, right? So he shared with me things that the chief marketing officer was so happy about. So basically, my models, my analysis was purely based on what I heard from the vice presidents and above, and
Hmm.
sometimes from the stakeholders, like meaning the outside or external clients. This person told me things that kind of brought the internal perspective in so very well that the model became much robust that I was producing. So I kind of owe a lot of that to him, and I think it's very important to kind of find these people, find these Yodas in the organization that you're working. And fourth, and the most important thing is, set the right expectation. Make sure that your leadership is aware of what are you going to focus on for the 90 days, so that you kind of protect yourself, and sometimes your team as well, because let the organization know what is your game plan for 90 days, because I've seen organizations that expect you to kind of deliver a whole model in 90 days. I've also seen an organization that expects you to just learn, sit back and learn in first 90 days. Now, I'm personally very impatient, so I always try and do something in the first 90 days as well, so that I can deliver something, but set the right expectation, so that when you have that 90-day conversation with your manager, it's a win-win. You kind of have told him what to expect. He or she comes in and they see what you've done, and you kind of create that first solid impression with your leadership. So sorry for a long answer, but that's what the game plan for the
No,
first
this
90
is an
days typically
amazing.
is.
No, this is an amazing perspective. It's a great tip and a hack which you've developed,
Mhm.
which has definitely worked for you. Now, talking about analytics, now, you
Mhm.
know, you spoke about these tips and tricks, and you spoke about building solutions which are scale and long lasting. How do you think you've approached it specifically from a scale perspective? Today, I was, conducting, or I was part of a panel, and we were
Mhm.
discussing the scale question. And everybody talks about POC and then scale. Do you align to that thought about first do a proof of concept and then scale, or do you believe you map out and then go with a big bang scale approach? What's your perspective from scaling?
Yeah, that's a very relevant one, because a lot of time that comes up in my world as well. So as you can imagine,
Yeah.
so I don't think I have a standard game plan for that. So what I mean by that is, so again, as I said, I like to plan. So I
Hmm.
like to at least have some visibility in what will this like in years. Uh, and everything that has a starting point also has an ending point. I know a lot of my peers, when they plan for a data science or analytics project, they plan as if it was indefinite, and that is never the case. Sometimes the life is 5 years, 10 years. Sometimes it's 15 years. But please know, everything that you begin will come to an end. Will be replaced by something better. So always have that in mind when you talk about think about scaling things upwards, because yes, you may, but don't really have a short-sighted focus. Now, how I approach scaling is in two ways. One is, definitely I also believe in showing the short-term value, because or doing that proof of concept, because it is important to kind of get that buy-in. It's important to have that shared accountability from within the organization. But more than accountability, I believe in others taking the ownership at the same amount of commitment level as me. So one
Okay.
example is, one of my previous companies. I was in a conversation with the chief sales officer, and my leadership was finance, so I also had the chief finance officer in the room, and great guys, right? So the conversation was around like, how can we empower sales teams? How can we give them more access to information? So that they can make better decisions and sell more products. So all that was great, right? But then, I wanted to make sure it's not just like, seen as good to have information. It's not seen as like, oh, so if I have that data point, my decision will be better. Better by how much? I don't know, but it'll be better, right? So it was that kind, right? Like, but I wanted more out of it. So what I did was I actually requested and pushed hard to our chief sales officer that sure we can create this dashboard for your team, and these were like mobile phone dashboards. You can access them on your personal device, especially the mobile personal device, and I actually requested him to make this a part of sales KPIs, meaning if you're a salesperson and if you are not looking at the dashboard before you make a sale, that means you'll be dinged for that. So it's not just my team like creating this; it's also the other party that's accepting the solution and owning it up. They are now like responsible for using what we have created. So it's not just they might not use it. They have to use it. And I think that actually helps me scale up in a much more efficient way so that I can like do things that are broadly accepted. Now, was this like my innovation or idea? Actually, no. It was an evolution. So it was an
Hmm.
evolution because in my previous roles, like at PayPal, we used to create solutions and we used to hope that people would like them enough to use them. But like I kind of over the years developed this that it's not just about like creating something and then selling it. It's about identifying what people need, like understand the magnitude of what people need. Sometimes they need it for the whole sales organization, sometimes they need it for the C level, and I've done both kind of dashboards, right? So but understand the need, like before you kind of say, oh, I'll scale it for 17,000 people. They might not use it, but let's do it. So I don't believe in that kind of scaling upwards. I believe in understanding out of 17,000, there are 2,000 that will use it. Let's focus on those 2,000 and let's ask them to kind of use it. And if they don't use it, let them have a chance to voice their opinion. Why? And then we can like probably create something that they would really want.
Analytics, and you spoke about evolution, and the world is evolving with the dawn of AI.
Uh-huh.
And everything is AI today. What do you see as an implication of AI within your current role or the roles which you would don in the future?
Yeah, I think AI is a great concept. Is AI unique? No. But it's a great concept because, and I see that more as an augmented intelligence kind of thing versus artificial intelligence. Because I think a lot of people still across a lot of organizations are wasting hours and hours of time that could be saved by machines. Like, that could be saved by a robotic process. That could be saved by like, creating something that actually is able to make that first level of decision, right? So I'm a big believer of AI, and I think in my world, in marketing, for example, the world is going to change, and it's going to change very fast. Like most of it is already changed. So with personal devices at your home, like an Alexa or a Google, or one of those like devices that you can talk to, like Siri, companies are going to sell to these devices that ultimately might make the decision on your behalf. So it's not a very like long drawn sci-fi future where the machines will kind of make those basic decisions for you, like reorder your groceries or stock up, or like call the person to cut your grass, like so companies are going to market to companies, so we'll have machines marketing to machines. And now what that means is we'll have to have machines that have smart enough marketing that evolves very quickly and adapts like to what the customer needs are and how they have changed. So one example of that is like traditional marketing world, we'll do customer research, we'll understand how are we hitting the note with the customer, like what has changed, how can we tweak the messaging, how can we tweak the offering. All that might change, and it might change because there'll be competition. There'll be other companies doing it, so everybody might have to end up doing it. And how this will change is people might go in to kind of buy something online, and they have five options to choose from, and they're super confused, and like looks like, oh, the other company just added one more deal to what they were offering, and or they kind of extended an offer for like 3 more days. Now my company, my machine, my models have to evolve and adapt to what others have done, because it's a very competitive world. So I think AI will, one, save time. Second, will make us market to machines, so machines marketing to machines. Third, I think it will actually empower us to do things which we are not doing currently. So when I say save time, it's basically free up the time to do things that are more advanced in nature. Now machines cannot make all decisions for us. The machines are still not known to have empathy. Some of them are claiming, but I don't think they have the empathy that humans have
Yes.
just yet. And so we would need humans combined with machines, humans powered with machines to kind of make those decisions much in a much faster way, but also much more robust decisions where the outcome, and then you are kind of adapting or changing on the spot.
And if anybody is thinking about building a career in AI, you being a mathematician at heart and with your pedigree, what would you recommend to someone?
Sure. So I would say so this is like in general, this is a broad recommendation that I typically have when I interact with students. Is you have to be very, very true to your core. So what that means is, sure, today you might use Python, tomorrow you might use another language. Traditionally we used SPSS back in the day, and SAS, and things change every single month or even days these days. I would say more than that, rely on the core, meaning rely on statistics and mathematics. Know your basics. Know exactly what you studied back then or want to kind of study today, so that your averages, your probabilities, your basic modeling, all that is core, and there's no substitute for that. So I would say if you want to make a career in artificial intelligence, focus on these three subjects really well, and try and look at the job profiles that will excite you, because trust me, never do a job just because it's amazing, it's like the sexiest job of the century. None of that should play into your career decision. What should play is will you enjoy doing that stuff every day over and over again? And if you ask me, I love my job and I love analytics, and I would stay in analytics till I retire. So that's me, though. I love numbers. I think when I look at the marketeers today, or the chief customer officers, all of them are data driven. So I think me, leaving data and going into that world. Now the world is changing and moving around data, but think about what will you enjoy, and if you enjoy that, if you enjoy doing artificial intelligence programming or testing or coding, try and build a foundation that will keep you very strong. So make sure you have your basics right. Second, perfect at least one language from a database query perspective. It might be SQL, it might be another language, but know at least one language that actually helps you extract data. Know at least one language that helps you model on that data. So, which is the R's or Pythons of the world. Then third, have a solid communication strategy and communication skill set, because you might be the best data scientist, but if people around you, your leadership, do not understand what you're working on, they like you, but they don't love you. So if you see the difference there. So for
Yep.
them to love you, you have to kind of know your stuff really well, and make sure you communicate it out well. It's like going to a heart surgeon. Sometimes some heart surgeons, actually, I don't think any heart surgeon will operate on you without telling you what's happening. Some of them will go into technical details and show you graphs and charts and pictures and videos, and you kind of feel that, oh my god, this guy is so nice and so smart, but you don't really you don't really love them, because you're still not very sure what they are saying. You just know that this is a smart person, so they'll do the right thing. Another kind of heart surgeon will actually draw it on a piece of paper and explain to you where it's the problem, what are they going to fix. Now that heart surgeon you would love, You know why? Because you kind of feel that you know a lot of what this heart surgeon knows, and you know that this is the right thing. So I think with customers having, or not just customers, with people having access to more information and data today, you need to be very good at your game, and you need to be able to explain to them and win their trust. And this is right from your most junior person in the organization, like let's say an intern, or like let's say like somebody who's just starting, like fresh out of campus, or like coming and taking a view of what you guys work on. Right from that level to your C level, like you should be having that ability to explain to them what's going on. And I think all this combined will actually help you, like with a solid career in AI for a very long time.
Let's talk a little bit about like and love. You've
Hmm.
had 15 years of experience now.
Hmm.
What part of your career you really love?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So, what
If you
I
choose
actually love my career.
if you choose
Yeah,
not to name the company, it's your choice. But I know you've worked
got
across
it.
different companies, but I'll save you on that.
Is here to save you.
Yeah. Thank you, Anis. So that's a good question. Uh, so I love my career. Like I've had ups and downs. I've had like managers who've been phenomenal. I've also had managers who've been like not that great. All of us have had that experience. Now, what I love about my career, and like like things that I've done, and like the key highlights, I would say, like I'll give you an example here. There was this one company, right? So I would not name the company right now, for the benefit of everybody here. But there was this company that I was kind of allowed to talk to VPs and SVPs and ideate with them. So I was a consultant, right? So I used to kind of walk the floor and like grab a coffee with these people. And I was not a salesperson, so I was like by no means having a sales target. It was more out of fun that I wanted to kind of solve something for them, and if I had resources to kind of help out, why not? Like, did I get a commission based on what I did? No. So, but I think back then I was pretty young, and like I was enjoying all this. So there was this like senior vice president at this major organization, and I went to his room, and I asked him for his challenges. And sometimes it's important to empathize with your stakeholders. Sometimes it's important to understand they are human beings beyond their KPIs or beyond their targets for the year. These are humans we are talking about. So when you empathize to them, they open up about what their problem on paper is, but also what their real problems are. And I was able to kind of connect them to other people in the industry, like similar industry, different industries, to kind of hear them out, and then sit down and like work on a proof of concept. And I remember this, like I was so we did all that, we did a lot of legwork, and like we kind of were able to show that this is going to like change the way they make money, and like for the better. So I remember I was at a doctor's office having a flu test. And the doctor comes out, like, so I was waiting for the results. He comes with the result, and this senior vice president gives me a call at the same time.
Hmm.
And he says that, Shivanku, you know what, I think I'll go with your idea, and I'll give you the funding for it. And I was like, oh my god. And this doctor tells me, like, you have flu. So I was like, I forgot about flu. I think the flu got better, like just by the news of like this new grant coming in. So I think those were some of the key highlights. Like, when you do something from scratch and they convert to a whole new work stream, they gave me a lot of adrenaline rush. And I think I started getting pleasures in such things throughout my career. So at Heineken, I was their first data science director, analytics director. And being the first and starting your team from scratch, gives you so much pride and joy that, you were able to do something which has the right foundations. I think those kind of things like give me a lot of pleasure and joy. Like to be able to kind of either steer the direction of the organization, or like be able to create something ground up, and not just like for 1 month or 1 year, or like couple of years. Create something which is going to be your legacy that you have left behind. Like I think that is what I would count on as like my key highlights, like the ones that I'm really in love with.
And these career decisions which you have taken over the years, was it calculated or was it luck or was it by heart?
Good question. So they were not calculated,
Okay.
obviously. So I have never joined an organization, and I know it's very hard to believe this, but I've never joined an organization like saying that or thinking that I'll join this and then quickly move. Never. Like every organization that I've joined them with a goal of growing within the organization. So they were definitely not calculated.
Hmm.
Now that said, was my career planned? Yes. So my job changes were not calculated. But did I know that this is what I wanted to do 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line? Yes, I did kind of plan for that. Was it going to be with the same company? Was it going to be in India versus USA versus within USA, Atlanta versus Rhode Island, or now Virginia? That wasn't planned. So I think that happened. I think luck played a big role there. So I would not discount that because my last three jobs, PayPal, Heineken, Hilton, I never applied for those jobs. So those jobs, the recruiters reached out to me and I really liked what they were saying and I talked to the leadership and I loved the leadership and that's how I kind of took the challenges. So I think I've not really pursued that hey, here's where I want to go, here's the industry I want to kind of be in. I do have some conscious choices that I've made. So I wouldn't name the company here, but there was this company in Bay Area
Hmm.
that sold products that I don't agree with. They sold products to young adults, and I think those actually damage young adults. So and they were offering me good money. When I say good money, probably twice of what I'm making today.
Okay.
Uh, but that was a conscious choice that I will not go there. So that was planned, if you will, of what not to do. But what I ended up doing, I think it was a function of what kept coming in and things falling in place. So if you are a recruiter and you approached me, and I keep saying no to a lot of recruiters, so it's not I'll jump on the next opportunity that comes to me. No, because I think I try and see how is this role or position fitting into my master game plan. And the master game plan is to go and do growth and transformation. So that's my ultimate goal. And if things are falling in place to help me do that, I take the challenge up and come and deliver.
So when you're thinking about these career moves, do you consult a mentor? Do you have a mentor in life?
I have a few mentors, so
Okay.
not one, but I have a few. I don't have this one person because the thing is I've changed so many industries, and I think at some point you have a mentor, and then you kind of change the industry, and the mentor has some idea but not a lot. My dad used to be a mentor for a very long time till I came to the US. He was my mentor. I used to use him as a sounding board and get his ideas and thoughts. I like We lost him 3 years back, but my
Sorry to
mentor
hear
is
that.
so I have no worries. I have a few mentors. So one of them recently I was lucky enough to have Janie Whiteside, who's the chief customer officer at Walmart, as one of my mentors, and
Hmm.
she's amazing. She's creating her own new path at Walmart within the organization, that I'm currently a part of, Hilton. I have a couple of mentors here. So my immediate boss, my chief operating officer, my chief marketing officer, my VP of marketing performance insights. So I see mentors as people who would be a good sounding board for me, people who would inspire me, and people who I would like to be when I make a move happen. So based on the occasion, based on the situation, I kind of reach out to multiple people. But at the end of the day, I also use my family. I try and so my wife is from a very different industry. She's in the education domain. She's a teacher,
Hmm.
and so very different. She barely knows my industry that well. But I still I still see every decision I make as a family decision. So I also consult with her and talk to her. I still talk to my mom and she again is a PhD, but very different industry, not at all in my industry or domain. But I like to kind of use my family also as sounding board because ultimately the decision I'm making impacts all of us.
So if I heard it right, your mom is a PhD, your
Mm-hmm.
father was a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking about doing a PhD as well, or like be a doctor, Dr. Shiv?
That's a very, 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 very interesting question because that was my ultimate goal.
Mm,
So when I was in high school,
okay.
I wanted to kind of, I wanted to kind of actually pursue medicine,
Okay.
not just like PhD, but I wanted to pursue medicine, and mathematics kind of happened by chance. But now I'm in love with mathematics. So, but back then I was like more in love with biology. So coming back to the question around PhD, I think PhD is fantastic. I would love to do that, but I think it's very, very hard to kind of find time for it and the commitment for it. Uh, but my long-term plan is, and again, like things fall in place. And as I said to you, I always have this plan, right? Like that I
Mm-hmm.
look for like years in advance. So my long-term plan is, in the next 20 years, I want to kind of do what I do in the corporate world, and then I want to take up studies. I actually want to go back to school at 55 or 60, and I want to kind of start pursuing medicine, and like do the whole 7 8 year gig, where I pursue medicine practice, and then I want to kind of go and serve in a community that is underserved. So I know I'll be a bit aged, like I'll be a young doctor at an old age, if you know what I mean by that. So I'll be like not as experienced, but I don't think I'm going to charge a penny for any of that work that I do, because I think there is so much that the world needs in terms of, especially in the current times, we've all heard like there's an urgent and dire need of healthcare professionals,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to kind of dedicate the latter part of my life to serving people. And I think I love like I love research. I love like backing my decisions based on white papers and articles and like peer reviews. So I would actually love to go back and to the school and like do what I always wanted to do. I know like I have responsibilities right now, and I think I still have to do my fair share in the corporate world. But I think my ultimate, if you say like the source of happiness would be to kind of do what I always wanted to.
Great. Uh, I was actually watching a TED talk the other day, and there is a lady who's now in her 70s, is a
Mm-hmm.
doctor, and now she's part of
Oh
the
wow.
UN Commission. She actually was a doctor. She got
Mm-hmm.
married, so she had to give up her job. And her husband was a Air Force pilot. And at the age of 49, if I remember the TED talk very well, he retired. And
Okay.
her daughters were old enough that she said, I want to go back and follow my passion. And now,
Great.
when I watched her uh, TED talk, it didn't come across she was in her 70s. She was so energetic, and she's gone to places which a normal human being would be terrified. She's been in places where there were shell bombings. She's been to Sudan. She's been to Afghanistan. She's been to Trinidad, Tobago, and most of the time in the conflict areas because UN supports that.
Mm.
I'll share that with you. It was beautiful to watch her interview, and it motivates
Yeah,
you.
I would love to see.
It motivates you that age is just a number. It's all in your heart and mind.
Absolutely.
So on the
That is so inspirational. I would love to watch him. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And on that thought, Shiv, you know, you did speak a lot about your family, and you did speak about your father being a mentor. You do talk to your mom, and you have a wife and a kid, and they have influenced your career in significant way. Uh, and
Hmm.
i- you have two kids, and
Yeah.
you've moved different cities also within United States. How's
Yeah.
how's family coped up with your craziness? I would put it that way.
Yeah. No, fair question. I think whatever I am today is all because of my family, be it by my parents, my wife, or my kids. Everybody has sacrificed. Everybody. Like right. I was not a very so yes, I was like the first rank holder in my school,
Hmm.
but I was not an easy student, or I was not an easy kid to have in house. So what I mean by that is every test, every examination was a nightmare for my family because I used to go crazy. And I don't know if you've met one of us, but I'm one of those people who is like very upset if you get a 99 out of 100. I want to get 100 out of 100.
Wow.
So I
Okay.
was very,
I was
and you can
I was
imagine
satisfied
how.
with 75 if I got out of 100. So
Right. So I was not an easy student at all, not an easy child to have. My parents used to be like, so my brother, very cool guy. Like, he was very, very happy with whatever he scored, never really cared for numbers that much. But now he's also like, a gold medalist. So I'm assuming now he's changed. But back in the day, I used to be up all night. I used to keep my family up. Like I used to have tea and coffee and like, study and like, go to exam and like, come out of it with like, thinking I got one question wrong and my whole day was like, sobbing and like, disappointed with my life and all of that stuff. But I think my parents did a great job coping up with me, but also kind of being there for me, telling me that it's okay. It's okay not to get 100 out of 100. It's okay to kind of, get a 91. It's not a bad score. Dude, go back and relax. I think that was like, a huge role that they played. Similarly here, like, at the workplace also, I'm very competitive and ambitious. So if I have an idea that did not go through, or if somebody like, came up with like, some kind of a disruption to what my like, growth plan was, and this is like the business growth plan, I would be getting upset. Like, so my wife is now my sounding board, and my mom still is playing that role, like, of like, being that person who calms me down. But I think at the end of the day, if I look at any successful leader, their families have done a lot of sacrifices. Like, moving from cities to cities, my son hardly believes that somebody can be in the same elementary school for more than 1 year. So I think it's unfortunate, and that's why like I'm trying to kind of put some brakes on like how far and how often will I change
Hmm.
jobs and careers. But I think family played a tremendous role. Like I owe every single thing to them.
On that note, and an amazing thought from you, Shiv, is there anything you would like to share with the listeners as a closing note?
Hmm. No, I think I really enjoyed this conversation, Anis, and thank you for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to kind of share my heart. I always believe in like sharing as much as you know.
Okay.
So I don't really think like I don't really think we are in a world today where you need to preserve your IP. Like I don't really think you need to kind of course like put it in a lock and key like kind of setup of what you know. If you know something, share it out, and trust me, that actually helps the collective and also helps you. So an example of that is whenever I'm at a campus talking to students, or whenever I'm talking to a team outside of my team here at Hilton or another organization, I always believe in like sharing all my learning experiences, obviously given the constraints of time,
Hmm.
because I believe that at some point we are all going to work with each other, and it actually has happened quite so often that people are surprised. When I talk to a company, when I'm hiring somebody, or when I'm interviewing, I actually like get to know people that, oh, we worked together like 5 years back, seven. So it's a very small world. So I would say like my only closing thought is like be kind to others, share as much as you can, and the power of like becoming indispensable, or like becoming that unique personality, or value contributor to the organization is not based on like what you know today. It's based on what you do today. So focus on like what you do, like keep evolving, keep learning. There's no need to kind of keep your secret sauce in a locker. Like keep learning more secret sauces, like keep making secret recipes, like so I think that's what I would like end love to end with.
Shiv, b- thank you for sharing those beautiful thoughts as a closing comment,
Sure.
and really, uh, thankful to for you to doing this. And it was a
Sure.
pleasure for hosting you. So thank you, sir.
Same here. Thank you so much, Anis.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening in. And we close yet another episode of Masters Decoded. If you've enjoyed the episode, please you can help us out by sharing it on social media. I would personally appreciate that. It's how we can reach more listeners, and the more listeners we have, the more awesome guests I can get in touch and convince to participate in these conversations that are a joy to have for me, and I hope they are a joy for you to listen as well. You can also help a lot leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. Reviews are surprisingly helpful in supporting the podcast to get to more listeners. If this episode has intrigued you, I would request you to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date and get notified to the future episodes. With that, I bid you and see you in the next episode.